Okay, I've taken the liberty of creating two more channels here for our hand control object on the right side, and one is called fist, another one called gun, and we have a divider. So we're going to use these to get the fingers to take a very specific pose, basically. And there could be other ways of doing this. Of course, you can rely on the actor since that's functionality right there. But we're gonna do this more like in the way it's done at the rigging stage, which is by directly wiring these channels onto very specific values on each rotation axis for our joints. So let's take a look at what's going to be needed here. We're going to start with the index finger, and the shape I'm going to try to get the hand to get into is it's what it's sort of known as a very universal sorry, hand pose that was used a lot quite a few years ago in video games mostly, where the hand takes this pose that is actually useful for many different situations. It could be used to hold the gun, it can be used to shake another character's hand, or to grab a doorknob or something like that. And back in the days where game engines were very limited in the number of joints they could support per character, game designers had to find creative ways of overcoming some of these limitations. And one of them was this: that the character's hand would remain on the with the same pose throughout the game. It was just the way the mesh was modeled, and this particular pose allowed the character to actually perform lots of actions without it looking awkward. So we're gonna go for that with our gun channel right there, and I called it gun just because it's gonna look like he's holding a gun, even though the character has no gun. But that's not the point. The point is just to learn some rigging techniques. So let's get on to that. So we're gonna need to wire different values onto all of our joints. So we're gonna basically do the same, add math multiple math nodes throughout the entire graph. So let's start with the index finger. So for example, we already have here for several of its rotations. So let's start with another input on the existing math node, and we're going to add its own multiply node to this. So let's see which value we're going to need over here. This is just for the first joint on the index finger. So let's say that we get 20. Oh, I need to increase the value over here to 100. And no, that's not the axis that I was looking for. So let's disconnect that. And we need to, I'm looking to rotate this on the z-axis. So our z-axis here needs some math multiple add node. And now I'm going to connect to that one. Okay, so there it is. 20 is a little bit too much. Just 10. Then I'm going to also rotate the next joint, which is this one right here, on its z-axis. So let's add another math multiple node to that. And this one, let's see how much I'm going to need to sorry, to add to it. Let's try first minus 45. I'm gonna leave it at that for now. I can come back and tweak it later. And the last one is this guy over here. Let's get him his math multiple node. And let's wire onto him. And in this case, we're going to need to multiply this by, let's see how much we're going to need to use. Let's try minus 60. I would go even with minus 80. There you go. So I got the pose for the first joint. So now I'm going to move on to the second one. We're going to start from here and rotation on the z-axis. So let's convert this to another math multiple. Yeah, right node. And multiply that by -10. And that's enough for where I'm going with this. Let's move on to the next one. Another math multiple. And let's wire that one. And let's multiply this one by, I don't know, let's say -60. Actually more than that. And then this guy. Let's wire that in. And let's multiply that by -60 and see how that looks. More. A little bit less than that. Yeah. That's better. I think this guy would need a little bit less. Needs to be a little bit more open. So let me go back and correct this guy. There you go. And now we need to do this guy. My actual reference for the pose is my own hand. I'm just making the pose with my hand and taking a look at what that looks like and deciding what I need to do with these guys' joints to actually achieve that pose. So I know that for you it's a little bit like working blindly because you have no idea what I'm looking at, but you'll see pretty soon. And let's multiply this by -15. Yeah, I think that's okay. And let's take a look at this guy. Convert that. And multiply that by -65. And the last one, the last joint is going to be multiplied by, let's see, -60. Yeah, that's okay. Sorry. And then let's look at this guy. This is actually one that is going to be a little bit more complex to do because of how, well, not really. I'm not going to rotate this guy that much because the pose is not that exaggerated. I would have to rotate this joint a little bit in on the x-axis if it was if the pinky was really curling, but I'm not gonna do it in this case, so I'm just gonna leave him alone. So I'm just gonna work with the other three guys. With him, and I'm gonna multiply this guy by, let's say, minus 80. That was a little bit too much. There we go. That's better. And this guy. A little bit less than that. And this guy. Yep, that's getting there. Now we just need to do the thumb. I'm gonna start with this guy and then adjust the root of the thumb if needed. I'm sorry. Let's see, minus 25. Even less than that. Yeah, that's better. And now, this guy. That's it. There's our gun pose. It still could use a little bit more refinement, but I guess you get the idea. It's just a matter of getting a pose that we're comfortable with. And now let's play with our user channel. As you can see, we can get the hand to assume that pose perfectly well based on the values that we used. Now, I want to make it very clear that this system, it works very nicely, and as you can see, you can continue to add as many things as you want, and just by having your own multipliers and plugging those into the multi-math nodes, you can get the system to work, and that's fine. But ideally, a better system would actually allow the animator to just rotate manually these guys and save those onto a pose, and then be able to recall that pose whenever he needs it. And that involves using more the functionality of the actors and sets that we have over here, that we have access to. We're not going to cover that in this course because that's more of an animation kind of workflow. I just want to make it clear that that's the most flexible way to do it, and probably the right way to do it, so that the animator can have more control over the specific poses, because over here you are determining the values and the animator might not be happy with them. So that would involve a lot of back and forth between the animator and the artist. On this, of course, you made a different panel that held all the poses with their multipliers, and you wired those into each one of these nodes, and then you gave access to the animator to that panel so he could go in and type the values he actually wants. That's another way of doing it. But I guess you already get the picture of how this actually works. And you can go and do the fist shape, for example, yourself as an exercise, where you would, again, start creating your own multiply nodes, plugging them into these math multiple nodes, setting the values, and getting the hand to take the shape of a fist. So that's pretty much it. That's all that remained for us to do for this character. I hope this has been helpful in terms of getting to have better controls for the hand that allow it to be easily animated. As you can see, we now have per finger control and also some general hand poses. So that's pretty handy. The only thing that remains is to, of course, dynamically parent this guy onto something on the rig, which in my case, it's going to be, let's unhide the hidden group, and I'm going to do it directly to this joint. So this guy will follow the arm, but it won't move as the hand moves, which can be distracting. So let me just see if there's another joint lower in the hierarchy. No, we have the wrist directly, so it's going to be definitely the lower arm. So I'm just going to get him, get the lower arm, compensation on, add parent, and do the same for the opposite side of the character, and we're done. So this covers the hand controls part of the character UI, and we have a few small details that we still have to take care of, but we're getting pretty close to wrapping this guy up. So let's get on to it. Okay, let's continue adding some more usability related features to our rig. And in this case, I'm gonna help the animator use the right channels to animate the character, because right now the animator could animate anything, and in some cases that might not make sense, or we might not want the animator to touch a certain channel. So just the way we used groups to hide from the animator parts of the rig that we don't want him to touch, we're going to use groups to hide from the animator channels in the rig we don't want him to animate. And that's actually pretty simple to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new group, and I'm going to call this one Ace Locked Channels. Okay, and it's going to be a standard group, but not from selected items. I'm going to set it to empty. I don't want it to contain anything. And I'm going to move this group up here, because as you can see, I've already ordered my groups list a little bit. I have all my assemblies on the top, which are the schematic workspaces I've been working in. Then I have actual groups over here, and lastly I have my channel sets. Okay, so let's select my new group, which is this one, Ace Locked Channels. And what I'm going to do is take, for example, these controls on the face of the character. These guys are meant to be moved. So it doesn't make any sense at all to rotate them. So what I can do is take those channels. I can select them here, or just by selecting the tool that I want the animator to use. Or in this case, I could select a bunch of things over here, like all these channels up to these guys. I don't care too much about the scale ones, but let's say I include them. And just right click over here and say add channels. So this group now contains channels instead of items. You want to be adding the channels. And the next thing I would do is come here to my assembly tab and say members locked on. So this means that all the members of this group are going to be locked and they cannot be edited. So next time I come back to my properties, when I select the locator, you will notice that these channels are unavailable. And if I try to change any values in them, I get a warning. So this is an effective way of limiting certain controls in the rig to be used in a specific way. So in this case, I don't think it can get any more obvious what these guys do, because when you select them, the move tool is automatically selected due to the command they are calling on selection, and the rest of the channels are just basically not available. So let's do, for example, these other guys. And actually, I think I can do all of them at the same time just by adding to the selection. I'm gonna start with these, and then I'm gonna click on the sorry, rotation channels and escape channels while holding down Control, so that the channels I'm selecting are for all the items, not just one. And you can check that out in the channel list. So here's rotation and scale for one item, rotation and scale for the next one, and so on and so forth. And then I can just say add channels, and now I have 50 channels in that group. And then when I click on any of these guys, you will see that they are unavailable. Okay, so you can continue to do this for all the other parts of the rig where you want certain channels to not be manipulated. So in this case, for example, I'm going to add the same scale and rotate the channels for all these guys. It looks like we have mixed states over here for this channel. So let's take a look. Okay, it's fine. We don't really care too much about that. I'm just gonna undo to retrieve my selection, and I'm going to select all the channels. Make sure, just do a quick look up to see if they got all selected. Yeah, and add them to my group. Okay, so now there you have it. Locked, locked. And in this way, you can prevent the animator from doing certain things with parts of the rig that he should not be able to. Let's take, for example, the jaw control, which needs to be rotated. It doesn't support moving, but it can be moved. And in this case, it just pulls the tongue with it, which is something we would definitely not want. So I can just select these channels and add them. So the animator won't be able to move this item, even if he wanted to. Now when I select the move tool, you will see that all of its axes are unavailable. I can change it to local, which will actually work, but it doesn't do anything. It just enables the manipulator, that's all. And that's it. I mean, I'm not gonna keep you around to see me go through all the items in the rig that I would like to lock or unlock. I guess you get the idea of how we're using this and why. So you can just go ahead and on your own rig, on your exercise rig, decide how you want certain things to behave and if it makes sense to lock them or not. Like in this case, I'm definitely gonna lock the position channels on this guy, and you can keep going and adding stuff to the lock channels group. So I guess that's it, and I'll see you in the next video.